Hi everyone, I'm Joe. Today I'm going to be talking about the New Zealand WorldCon 2020 and my there and back again story, or almost. Obviously I have to call the video there and back again as a reference to, of course, Lord of the Rings, which was obviously famously filmed in New Zealand. Now the New Zealand WorldCon was being and still is technically being held in Wellington, which is the capital of New Zealand, between the dates of July the 29th and August the 2nd. Now, as of the moment that this video goes live on the Sunday night, I should, however, have been already in Australia waiting for my final plane to get to New Zealand, because my plan had been to go there, as you can tell, over a week early and go on a road trip with a bunch of friends and fellow booktubers around the North Island, and indeed one of the stops would have been to the where they filmed the Lord of the Rings years ago, and indeed the Hobbit trilogy, which was dubious to a lot of people. Anyway, and that would have been an amazing week. And the second week would have been, of course, in Wellington itself, and we would have gone to the various panels and seen, obviously, and bumped into various authors and just hung out for a 2-week period, and it would have been really, really fun. However, obviously COVID-19 or coronavirus happened. That screwed everything up for everybody, frankly. Obviously I am not going to be in New Zealand. I'm still, unfortunately, still in England, and indeed that is where I'm going to be staying for a while, because coronavirus is going to continue messing everything up for everybody for some considerable time. Anyway, the main part of the WorldCon to me, now this would have been the third WorldCon in a row I would have been to. I went to Dublin WorldCon last year and San Jose, California in America the year before. I loved both of those WorldCons, and I loved the travel and seeing the new locations. However, the one thing that became more important to me about both previous WorldCons, indeed it was the most significant factor about New Zealand to me this time, was the people. Now obviously going to New Zealand would have been amazing, seeing all the scenery and such, but that group of people that I would have spent 2 weeks with, just hanging out with, and they're all people that I class as friends. And for the record, 2 years ago maybe, I would have thought of them as booktubers who happen to be friends. Nowadays they are friends who I happen to have met through Booktube. You know, I mean proper actual friends. I'm pretty sure that most of them would think the same way as well. So I thought for this video, as I don't really have anything much to talk about as far as New Zealand goes, because I'm not going to be there. I had planned to do a vlog and actually film when I was over there. Nothing's going to happen because I'm not there. I thought instead I would do the only type of video that I can still do related to the New Zealand WorldCon, and that is essentially a booktuber recommendations. Basically, I'm going to recommend all of the booktubers that I would have been hanging out with for 2 weeks, and basically complimenting them really probably excessively and saying how great they all are, because they all are great, as you can blatantly tell momentarily. And I will talk about them in alphabetical order by their first name. So the first one of those is Andrea, whose channel is Infinite Text. Now the first few things that come to mind when I think of Andrea is the fact that she is a really nice person. I mean, she is Canadian, so you know, being nice is essentially a requirement for being Canadian as far as I'm aware, although she happens to be nice coincidentally anyway. She's a really thoughtful person and a really considerate person, and she's a really fun person to be around. She's got a certain sense of humour that is quite subtle but really interesting and fun to see, and I would greatly recommend her channel because she talks about books in a way that I don't, and she talks about a great different variety of books than me. Her interesting books actually doesn't overlap that heavily, relatively speaking, but we got on extremely well, and indeed we have buddy read things together in the past. We will buddy read things together in the future, And frankly, Andrea is a really nice person and a great person to subscribe to as far as the Booktuber is concerned. Now, the second person is Bree, whose channel is now BreeReadsBooks, although years ago it was a different channel now. But regardless, now the things that immediately come to mind when I think of Bree is that she is caring and considerate, and she's a very organised person, and within our group she was almost the sort of motherly figure in our little WorldCon group, because she was there making sure that before we started doing anything each day, she would be asking everybody, have they had enough to eat, do they have drinks with them, and doing the things that, frankly, in my case, in many other people's cases, you know, their parents might do, or a sister or something. In our group it was Bree. Bree was making sure that we all had what we needed to, and it was really nice to see and amusing to see, and she's just a genuinely nice person to be around. You know, she's got a very sort of bubbly personality, she's cheerful by nature, and she's also very practical, and she's capable of getting things done. And her channel and the variety of books that she speaks about is really interesting, especially as she tends to focus on the sort of political and the social aspects of books, and delves into them in a way that I personally don't do in quite such an obvious way. I'll talk about it as an aside. She'll focus a video on the politics and how it affects real world events, and her channel is really interesting because of it, and I would very recommend her channel as well. The next person I'm going to talk about is Claire, whose channel is her full name, Claire Rousseau. She is a Finch woman who now lives and indeed is naturalised within the UK, in London. In fact, actually she's the closest booktuber that I'm talking about in this video, in fact. And the most obvious things that come to mind when describing Claire is that she's a very, very honest and direct person. She's very no nonsense, and basically she's the sort of person that you basically don't try to talk over or talk down to. Claire will tell you if you're being a prat, frankly, and she doesn't take shit from people, to put it bluntly. And that honesty and that directness is really nice to see. In our Booktuber group and our WorldCon group, she was a really important part of it, because of course she's very confident with talking to people as well. So if something needed to be said to somebody that we were a little bit unsure about talking to, Claire frankly didn't care. Claire would just go up and talk to them and get stuff done, which was frankly, it was very useful having that kind of personality in our group, because I mean, obviously myself, I am very quiet, and there's many other people in our group that is very quiet as well. Claire's still quiet, but she's got a certain confidence inside her and making herself do these things. And her channel is focused, as far as I'm thinking of it, on the one major aspect of it is being on fandom. Specifically, how does fandom relate to obviously what I do, you know, books, also within other media formats like movies and games and such. She talks about how it's all interconnected, about how authors and creators communicate with the fans, and she is a fairly significant figure within BookTube, within the fandom community. I am not a fandom person, I take no part in it, frankly, other than, you know, communicating mildly with a few authors here or there, but it's an aside for me. With Claire, that's a major point, and something that is very interesting and fairly unique for her channel, which I obviously would recommend. The next person I'm going to talk about is Kelsey, known as the Fancy Hat Lady Reads on BookTube. Now, the most obvious ways to describe Kelsey is to say that she's optimistic, caring and considerate, and she's very much non-judgmental. She's very open-minded to people, and she'll just talk to you, and she's remarkably easy to get along with. I mean, obviously everybody in this video is, but with Kelsey, when I first met her, I hadn't known her as long as some of the others that I had met that first time, and yet with Kelsey, it was really easy just to talk to her and get along with her and just walk around a convention centre with her. And it was because of her sort of lightness, I suppose, and her optimism. She's very totally non-judgmental about anything. she just takes you for what you are. Although she's a really nice and easy person to get along with and hang out with. Her channel, one of the main points of that is obviously the fact that she reads fairy tale retellings and talks about books in a slightly different way than I do, because she really talks about them in a very in-depth manner and talks about the author and author intentions and very deep introspective reviews of books that I probably don't always read that often. I mean, our overlapping books is relatively light, but I still find her videos really interesting and indeed obviously watch them because Kelsey's personality works with the way she talks about books and makes a really interesting and fun channel. The next person I'm going to talk about is Rachel, known as Kalanadi on Booktube. Now, if you've followed me only for a short time on Booktube, then you may have heard me only mention Rachel's name once or twice. If you've known me for many years on Booktube, then you will have heard me say Rachel's name many hundreds, literally, of times. Because I have talked about Rachel and mentioned Rachel in passing more times on my channel than everybody else combined. And for the record, I actually know that is a fact at this point. And I don't think it's going to change anytime soon. Now, Rachel, when I immediately think of her, the points that I think about are the fact that she's highly intelligent, she's very eloquent and articulate with her words, like me, who actually has to seriously think about what I'm saying and try to actually make sense of what I'm trying to put across on camera. Rachel, you feel as though it's a bit more natural with her. And also, she's very thoughtful and also very funny as well. Despite the fact that Rachel many years ago had surgery to remove her sense of humour, I'm very glad that the surgeons were incompetent and failed to do so completely, because she's actually a really amusing person, although she doesn't think it, and indeed always say that she's not. She is. Rachel, you are funny. You're just not in an obvious way, you're more subtle than that. And I always am smiling when I watch Rachel's videos. And indeed, when you talk about Rachel's videos, the main point to me is the fact that she always does very deep, introspective and remarkably thoughtful reviews of books that actually I do have quite a large overlap with books with Rachel. Actually, Rachel is probably the person that I have probably the most closest overlap in variety of books with out of anybody I've ever met online, in fact. And the way she talks about books always gets me interested in them, and indeed I've got a sarcastic running joke with Rachel where I keep blaming and thanking her for making me read books, mainly because Rachel is both my favourite booktuber and also my favourite human. So, that's quite a thing for to say, which happens to be true, and I cannot recommend her channel enough, as you might have gathered. Now, the next person I'm going to talk about is Reija, whose channel is known as The Book Finch. Now, Reija is a Finnish booktuber. She is highly intelligent, although she has self-doubts about that, despite the fact I've told her how intelligent she is. And I know her significant other has also told her that on a regular basis, but she often doesn't believe us. But Reija, you are. She's actually really funny, and the way she talks about books and just her range of interests always makes for really interesting videos, regardless of what it happens to be, because Reija is, and I don't think she would mind me saying, got a wide range of quite geeky interests. Unsurprisingly, so have I. Computer games, music, books, and these other things we have in common. I got along with Reija really well in Dublin last year and found her remarkably easy to talk to. She's also got a very sort of subtle sense of humour where she'll say something that is actually really funny and people will laugh at what she says, and then Reija won't realise necessarily, at least at first, why people are laughing, and then she'll realise that she actually said something funny, which makes it funnier by itself. And I would greatly recommend her channel because she really talks about books in a really interesting manner, a really funny manner, and also a very deep manner, which is frankly a great combination overall. The next person I'm going to talk about is Shannon, whose channel is That's So Poe. And I can't talk about Shannon without mentioning her husband, Sush, who does feature in some of her videos. Roughly every other month there'll be one video where they'll do a video together. Now, the way I think about Shannon and Sush, because I can't really think about just Shannon because they're a couple and I've met them as a couple and I've talked to both of them and I think they're both amazing people. Shannon herself is super intelligent, as is Sush. She's very thoughtful and she has a very interesting way of thinking about books. She's very empathic with people and very socially minded, and that comes across in her videos because she speaks about books and focuses on aspects of books, on how they interact with the social side of our world, on the political side and various other aspects, and she'll link them together and talk about them in a way that I necessarily don't always. I'll talk about it passing. She focuses on that. She talks about a very different variety of books than me. Actually, she's probably one of the people that I have the least in common with as far as in this video on choice of books. You know, we've only got a small overlap with either Shannon or Sush, in fact, but they are both brilliant and they are a brilliant couple. I've met them together and they are both brilliant individually, like being super intelligent and caring and also very capable. And together though, they sort of combine and work together and become something greater than some of their parts, as you might say, because Shannon and Sush are both very capable, and in our group they were the ones able to sort of get us together and get us to sort of focus on what we were trying to do that day. And frankly, Shannon became a very important part of our group last year with the major support of Sush. I mean, I often feel as if people mention Shannon when you talk about her channel, but Sush is just as important and just as great, because Sush is a major anchor and a major source of support for Shannon to do what she does. And finally, the last person that I'm going to talk about is Thomas, whose channel is SFF180. Now, when I think of Thomas, I think of somebody who is very open-minded and very broad-minded. He has a wide range of interests, and indeed a wide range of interests, not just in general, but obviously within books. His channel, to me, I always think of as being very much focused on very new fiction and indeed future fiction, but also on the sort of era of classic golden age science fiction and everything in between. He tries to encompass everything in one person, frankly Thomas does, and achieves it well, both personally and on his channel. I spoke to him both the previous WorldCons, and one of the most interesting conversations I actually had in Dublin last year was actually with Thomas, and that was actually a conversation about politics, oddly enough. I don't normally talk about politics with people. However, the way I talked about with Thomas last year was really interesting. He was talking about American politics, I was talking about UK politics, and that conversation was frankly really interesting, and I still think of that conversation when I think of Dublin. That was one of the major points of the WorldCon, actually, oddly enough. I mean, to me personally, which obviously it didn't affect anybody else other than me and Thomas, but it was quite major though, because it was unusual. I didn't expect to have a deep, introspective conversation about politics and world events, and I did. I really enjoyed that conversation with Thomas, and indeed that's how his channel comes across. You get the feeling that he's the sort of person, and indeed he is, that you can just have either a casual conversation about something quite trivial with, or something a lot more meaningful and a lot deeper with. And his channel is really interesting because of that dynamic between both casual things and deep things, and obviously the range of old and future and present. Very interesting combination, of which I would recommend overall. So that is it for all of the booktubers that I'm going to recommend in this video, that I should have been spending a 2-week holiday with the other side of the planet with. Out of interest, I should have travelled a total of almost 30,000 miles combined for the New Zealand WorldCon. Instead, I'm just travelling around my house, which, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but it's not quite as exciting as travelling to the other side of the planet and hanging out with a bunch of great people. Instead, I have to merely be content for now with talking to them online, which is for the time being, fine, I can manage for now. Although I definitely want to travel in the future, and I will definitely be travelling to meet up with every single one of these people in the future as well, because I am not missing out on seeing everybody in this video. Obviously, I will link all of them in the description box below, and I would greatly recommend you checking out all their channels, because they are all really nice people and really interesting booktubers. I mean, that said, that is it for this one and only WorldCon related video. I actually had planned to do a total of 4 videos related to different aspects of the WorldCon, but obviously not happening. So instead, I just have to make do this year with just 1 video, sadly. Anyway, all my social media links can be found in the description box below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you another day. Bye for now.